Oops. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to our service and our parashah service. And thank you so very much. I didn't have my microphone on, so I do apologize. But we have an unusual parashah today, and that is because of the ice bomb that's hitting all of North America. It's hitting here in Salem, Oregon as well. And it's just now starting to rain and melt off. But we did ask all of our congregants not to come in today for safety reasons. There have been major accidents all over the place because people sliding off the roads and stuff. So today what we're going to do, there's two of us here. We have Tim in the control booth. We have me down here. And what we're going to do is, it's going to be similar to a normal parashah, except we will be reading the entire Torah portion this time because we'll have less discussion time, obviously. And then I was going to go through when we hit the questions. If you logged on, you're more than welcome to leave comments there. Tim is here and he'll be reading those. And then also if you have any questions, and then we will work to answer those as best we can. And then I will also be sharing some of the answer information that I have in hopes that will be helpful to everybody. And at the end, we were going to do announcements, and then I'll do the Aaronic blessing. So I just want to let you know it's a little bit different today. And today is Torah Parashah number 10 on your schedule for doing all the parashahs in a whole year, the first 5 books of the Bible. And this one's called Miketz, and it's at the end. And this is at Bereshit, or the book of Genesis, chapter 41:1 through 44:17. And before we have the blessing of the reading of the Torah, Baruch Yahweh HaMevarak. Baruch Yahweh HaMevarak Le'olam Vaher. Baruch Yahweh HaMevarak Le'olam Vaher. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Yahweh Baruch Shemo Noten HaTorah. Amen. And in English, blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from among all peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, bless his name, giver of the Torah. Now, in anticipation of us doing a normal parashah, I was going to have us read just the first chapter. But again, since we are going to be short on discussion time, we're going to read through the whole Torah portion, which I timed it. It looks like it's going to take between 20 and 30 minutes. So get comfy when we do it. I'll read the first chapter here off the screen, and then Tim has got the other chapters up in the control booth, and he'll be reading those on his microphone. So chapter 41, 1 through 36. And it came to be at the end of 2 years' time that Pharaoh had a dream and saw him standing by the river, and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, beautiful looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. Then saw 7 other cows coming up after them out of the river, ugly and lean of flesh, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and lean of flesh cows ate up the 7 beautiful looking and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed a second time, and saw 7 heads of grain coming up on one stalk, plump and good, and saw 7 lean heads scorched by the east wind coming up after them. And the 7 lean heads swallowed the 7 plump and complete heads. Then Pharaoh awoke and saw it was a dream. And it came to be in the morning that his spirit was moved, and he sent and called for all the magicians in Mitzrayim, Egypt, and all its wise men. And Pharaoh related to them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my crimes this day, when Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. Each one of us dreamed a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. And there was with us a Hebrew youth, a servant of the captain of the guard. And we related to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came to be as he interpreted for us, so it came to be. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And he shaved and changed his garments and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. Now I myself have heard it said of you that you understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me, let alone Elohim, answer Pharaoh with peace. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, beautiful looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. Then saw 7 other cows coming up after them, poor and very ugly and lean of flesh. Such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Mitzrayim. And the lean of flesh and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. Yet when they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. Also I looked in my dream and saw 7 heads coming up on one stalk, complete and good. Then saw 7 heads withered, lean, scorched by the east wind, coming up after them. And the lean heads swallowed the 7 good heads. And I spoke to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 lean and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty heads scorched by the east wind are 7 years of scarcity of food. And this is the word which I spoke to Pharaoh. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. See, 7 years of great plenty are coming in all the land of Mitzrayim, but after them 7 years of scarcity of food shall arise, and all the plenty be forgotten in the land of Mitzrayim. And the scarcity of food shall destroy the land, and the plenty shall not be remembered in the land because of the scarcity of food following, for it is very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the word is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hastening to do it. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Mitzrayim. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, to take up 1/5 of the land of Mitzrayim in the 7 years of plenty. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain unto the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And the food shall be for a store for the land for the 7 years of scarcity of food, which shall be in the land of Mitzrayim. And do not let the land be cut off by the scarcity of food. Tim, you ready with the other ones?
So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find one such as this, a man in whom is the spirit of Elohim? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, Insomuch as Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning, as wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh took his signet ring and his hand, and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him with garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck, and had him ride in the 2nd chariot which he had. And they cried out before him, Bow the knee, and he set him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanah-Paneah, and he gave him as a wife Anaseh, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. So Joseph went over all the land of Mitzrayim. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim. And Joseph went out from his presence of Pharaoh, and went out throughout all the land of Egypt. Now in the 7 plentiful years the ground brought forth abundantly, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Mitzrayim, and laid up all the food in the cities. He had laid up in every city the food of the fields which were surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain as the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of the famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget my toil in all my father's house. And the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Then the 7 years of plenty, which were of the land of Egypt, ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all the lands, but in all the land of Mitzrayim there was bread. And when all the land of Mitzrayim was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And the Pharaoh said to the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, do." The famine was over all the land of the earth, and Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe in the land of Mitzrayim. So all the countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all the lands. And when Yaakov saw that there was grain in Egypt, Yaakov said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt."
Tim,
Yeah.
you want to turn the volume down on the mics? We're getting some pretty serious feedback. There you go. That'll probably help.
Maybe you want to get me one of the portable mics.
Yeah, let's do that.
And when, let's see. And he said, "Indeed, I have seen that there is
Hang on.
grain in Mitzrayim."
Try this one, buddy. It's just the volume's too high.
Is that better? Okay.
We'll find out.
Alrighty. Go down to the place and buy for us there, that we may eat and not die. And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Mitzrayim. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with him. For he said, lest some calamity befall him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who sojourned, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was governor over all the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came down and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but then acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. And then he said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered all the dreams which he had dreamed about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. In this manner you will be tested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you. Or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." So he put them all together in prison 3 days. And Joseph said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to a prison house, but you go and carry the grain for the famine of your house, and bring your youngest brother to me. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did, and they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered and said to them, saying, "Did I not speak to you, saying, 'Do not sin against this boy'? And you would not listen. Therefore, behold, this blood is now required of us." But they did not know that Joseph understood him, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. And he turned himself away from them and wept. And he returned to them again and talked with them. And he took Shimon from them and bound them before his eyes. Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, and to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. So they loaded their donkeys with grain and departed from there. But as one of the men opened his sack and gave his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of a sack. And so he said to his brother, "My money has been restored, and there it is in my sack." And their hearts failed, for they were afraid, saying one to another, "What is this that God has done to us?" And they went to Yaakov their father in the land of Canaan and told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies to the country. But we said, 'We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, the son of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father to stay in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the Lord of the country, said to us, 'By this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take food for the famine of your household, and be gone. Bring your youngest brother to me, so that I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and that you may trade in the land.' Then it happened as they emptied their sacks, they surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And they and their father saw the bundles of men, and they were afraid. And Yaakov their father said to them, 'You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Shimon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin? All these things are against me. And Reuben spoke to his father, saying, kill my 2 sons. If I do not bring him back to you, put it in my hands, and I will bring it back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the Sheol. Now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, go back, buy us a little food. But Judah spoke to him, saying, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. And Israel said, why do you deal so wrongfully with me, as to tell the man whether he had still another brother? But they said, the man asked us pointedly whether about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, bring your brother down? And Judah said to Israel's father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we, you, and our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. But if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. And their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry them down as a present for the man. A little balm, a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the money in your hand. Take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also and arise and go back to the man. And may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your brother and Benjamin. I am bereaved. So the men took the present, and Benjamin, they took double the money in their hand, and arose and went down to Mitzrayim. And they stood before Joseph. And Joseph saw Benjamin with them, and he said to the steward of the house, take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon. Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, it is because of the money which we returned in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so he may make a case against us and seize us, to take us as slaves with our donkeys. When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked with him at the door of the house and said, oh, sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened when we came to the encampment, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sacks, our money in full weight. So we have brought it back in our hand, and we have brought down our other money in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put the money in our sacks. And he said, peace be to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your fathers has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. And then he brought Shimon out to them. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet and gave their donkeys feed. And they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, and they heard that he would eat bread there. And Joseph came home, and they brought him the presents which was in their house, and bowed down before him in the earth. Then he asked them about their well-being and said, is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? And they answered, your servant our father is in good health. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves. And they lifted their eyes and saw, and he lifted his eyes and saw Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? And he said, Elohim be gracious to you, my son. Now his heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep. And he went into his chamber and wept there. And he washed his face and came out and restrained himself, saying, serve the bread. And they set him a place by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked in astonishment at one another. And he took servings to them from before them, but Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with them. And he commanded the steward of the house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Also bring my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack, the youngest, and his grain money. So he did according to the word that Joseph had said. As soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away, and their donkeys And when they had gone out of the city and were not far off, Joseph said to the servant, "Get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is this not the one from which my Lord drinks, and which he indeed practices divination? Have you done evil in doing so?' And so he overtook them and spoke these same words. And they said, 'Why does my Lord say these words? Far be it from us that your servant should do such a thing. Look, we brought back the money to you from Canaan, the money which was found at the mouth of our sacks. How could we steal silver or gold from my Lord's house? With whomever of your servants is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves.' And he said, 'Also let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be blameless.' Then each man speedily let down his sack at the ground, and each opened his sack. So he searched, and he began with the oldest and left off with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. And they tore their clothes, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. So Yehuda and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there, and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said to them, 'What deed is this that you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I certainly practiced divination?' And Yehuda said, 'What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are my Lord's slaves, both we and he also in whom the cup was found.' But he said, 'Far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand is the cup was found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, go to Shalom and your father.'"
Thanks, Tim. I had to switch mics. The battery on that one's dying. Also, I think because this one was on, it was giving you feedback back there. So, okay. So now we shall go to the blessing after the reading of the Torah. Baruch atah Yahweh, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu toret emet, v'chaye olam nata betachenu. Baruch atah Yahweh, Baruch Shemo, Noten HaTorah. Amen. And in English, blessed are you, Yahweh, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us the Torah of truth, implanted everlasting life within us. Blessed are you, Yahweh, bless his name, giver of the Torah. Amen. All right, and this week's Parashah outline is, I was thinking about this one too, reading the outline here, because these are all about Joseph, whereas a few weeks it was all about Jacob. Jacob's coming into the story more and more later on, but for now the focus is on Joseph. So we have Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and we have Joseph rises to power, then we have Joseph's brothers go to Egypt, or Mitzrayim, and then Joseph's brothers return to Mitzrayim, and then Joseph tests his brothers, which is what we finished up with there. And in today's Torah Parsha questions, again, where is Yeshua in this, and how is this relevant to us today? Now, the first question I have is, explain in your own words, what is Yahweh's plan in this whole situation of Joseph or Yosef in Mitzrayim, both from last week's Parashah, this week, and on through Bereshit chapter 28. I mean, we have this whole saga that starts way over in the land of Canaan, and Joseph journeys to Egypt, and he's there doing all of these things, and then through chapter 48. Eventually, Joseph does die there, but one of his last wishes that he mentions to the children of Israel is, "Don't let me stay here. When we go back to the promised land, take me with you so that I could be buried in the cave of the patriarchs," they call it, in Hebron. Okay? So, are there any comments online? Yeah.
There are no comments online.
Okay, no problem. Tim, you had something.
Yeah, it's interesting that this really just humbles me, because it shows me that we really don't know the plan for our lives. We could claim to know plans, we can set good plans, but it's the Lord who ultimately decides what's going to happen. And then also something else that you just said, Joseph's heart his entire life yearned to be back in his homeland, the promised land. When he was in prison, he said, "I was a Hebrew stole away." When he's by Pharaoh, he's known as a high Ivri, a Hebrew. And all throughout, he's always, going back to the promised land right before he dies, take my bones back. That's where I want to go. And I believe it's something to do with the resurrection, but that's just me. That desire to be back at that homeland, that desire to be in Jerusalem, in that area. And I think that somewhere, if you've been there before, and then there's like a connection to the land that's hard to describe.
That's a very good point. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. A couple of things that I had noticed was that the story of Joseph sets up what's called an archetype. So Joseph is one of the two people that is recognized as a very important messianic figure for the nation of Israel. And it is put forth by many people that Yeshua, that we obviously follow and worship and accept as our Lord and Savior, fulfilled the role of Joseph, the suffering servant Messiah, the first time he came. And then when he comes the second time, he'll fulfill the second role of Messiah, which is King David, the conquering king. Anybody who reads Revelation is going to know that. And if you read the Yeshua's role in Ezekiel in the new temple towards the end of the book, you can also see he's the one that's ruling. They use a slightly different term in Ezekiel, but it's the same person. Someone in that level of authority usually has several titles. So it makes sense that they would use one slightly different in Ezekiel. But he's setting up that archetype, okay? The suffering servant suffers for others, didn't do anything wrong, and then he winds up saving his entire family, okay? And so we have that being set up. The other thing is Israel is in the land of Canaan. The family of Jacob, they're all in the land of Canaan. And Canaan is going to be judged. And it's also a very wicked place. And so to me, I put down that the Lord was rescuing his people from the land of Canaan to put them in a safe place. The land of Goshen in Egypt was up in the Nile Delta area by the Mediterranean. Very choice land, plenty of water, which when you look in Egypt, there's not a lot of water. It was a beautiful place for them to be protected, which is one reason why they flourished in numbers, instead of being the land of Canaan, because again, later on, we had talked about last year's Torah portions. The fullness of the Amorites had not reached the top level so that God could then bring the Israelites out and send them back, and he would use them as part of their judgment on the Amorites. So the Israelites, to me, are being protected from that. And so those are just some thoughts there that I had on that. Very much would love to hear discussion. Hopefully some more people will come online and we'll do that. But just that whole story, I think, is very, very important, which is why so much time is spent on it in this Torah portion.
It's also interesting because if you look at the roles here, you can see both the roles in Joseph. You can see the suffering servant and later the conquering king. And, I normally don't like this phraseology, but it works here, is happily ever after. You can see that here at the end there. It ends on a very positive, good note, the book of Genesis. And I believe at the end of the age, it's going to end just like that, where everybody kisses and makes up, so to speak. But Joseph's reigning and ruling, and he's only second to Pharaoh, but it's a type of what's going to happen when Yeshua comes back. And I believe that his brothers, that Jewish people, are going to see them, and there's going to be weeping, and you see so many types and shadows of that. But it's both and in the Joseph story. And someone pointed that out last time, and I've been thinking about that one.
It is interesting that Joseph is only second to Pharaoh, and Yeshua is only second to the Father. That is also somewhat of a parallel there. And then later on, when the Israelites wind up leaving, many people who are not Jewish people, Israelite people, Hebrew people, whichever term you wish to use, many people who are not that join them and come together, and that's what Yeshua does with us as well too. You don't just have to be a Hebrew or an Israelite. Today they use the term Jewish, but you can also be Gentile. And I think that's important too. It looks like we may have a comment or a question online.
Mike Wilmot says, Joseph has also had a deep heart check on his brothers because they repented. So that's really neat to see. And I noticed the same thing too, as he tested them in multiple spots. And it's interesting that he said, do this and Let's see where he said that. He said, do this and live, for I fear God. Let's see. If we go to Genesis 42:18, and this was when he first put him in prison. He said, Joseph said to them the third day, do this and live, for I fear God. So it's interesting. Throughout the story, that's one of the parallels with Joseph's life. And then if we go to Isaiah 11:1-3, I believe it is, it talks about what some people call the spirits of the Lord. Mm-hmm. And one of the spirits on the Messiah is the delight in the fear of the Lord. And you can see that here with that parallel between Joseph and between Yeshua.
Good point, Mike. Good to hear you on there in Arkansas. So thanks for joining us there too, buddy. Yeah, it's a very, very good point. I get a sense a couple of times Joseph might have been a little angry at some of his brothers, but obviously he was very touched by them and needed to test them, obviously, to see where they were. We'll get into that though in just a sec, what I was going to mention next. So let's see, it should be question number 2. I apologize on the PowerPoint. I glitched it on there, 1 and 1. But in question number 2, in 41:1-36, Joseph interprets Pharaoh's 2 dreams. And I had 3 questions here. Why does Yahweh give the dreams? And were they spiritual or practical dreams?
And I'm going to add something really quickly. So David sends out the Torah portion. So if you can't pick up a physical copy, there's an email sent out where you can get the links to this and look up the questions so you can be on the same page.
I don't know about you, but I've had dreams many times. Sometimes they're just dreams. You just go, well, that was interesting, and go back to sleep, or you get up and go do your day if it's the end of the night. Other times you could tell that they have meaning, and sometimes they're a representative dream. You know, like with the cows eating the cows, and the grain, the kernels, and the grains, and then, the east wind eating them up and stuff like that. And then other times I've seen physical dreams, and then I watch them get acted out by the people or the events exactly like I saw them. So that's why I brought up this question. To me, I think that's both. It's definitely there is a spiritual meaning, because cows don't swallow up cows, so there's obviously something there. But the condition of the cows and how it represented the 7 years, and that's exactly what happened during the 7 years, to me makes it a practical thing as well too. I don't know if any of you have had those type of dreams. I suspect you have, because I've heard a lot of people's dreams spoken of here, and I think it's always good to know which one it is, or is it both? Oftentimes it's both. And question B on number 2, regarding verse 18, can you think of another biblical account where a king's local magic guys could not interpret a dream, but a man of Yahweh did? Because that's what happened here. Pharaoh relates the dreams. All of his magicians, and I can tell you, Egypt had a lot of magicians. Probably the only place that might have had more at one time would be Babylon. Egypt had a lot of them, and none of them could figure out the dreams. So, does anybody have an answer to that one? Anybody online, or Tim?
Currently, no.
Okay.
Well, another thing I want to point out is it's interesting to see the more parallels is this and the story of Daniel and his friends, where they couldn't find anybody, and these are the most trained, expert magicians in all the land, and people in the bad kind of stuff, and yet they can't figure it out with the story of Joseph, or later with Daniel and his friends.
And that's the answer to the question, the book of Daniel. So if you go to the book of Daniel, chapter 2, it's through the whole chapter. I'll read 9-12, and then I'll skip down to 17-20 so you get an idea. But as I'm reading through this, think about what we just read about Joseph with Pharaoh. And I believe this is Nebuchadnezzar talking right now, the king of Babylon. But if ye will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you, and he's talking to his magic guys. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans, which was a group of soothsayers, magicians, mystics, answered before the king and said, "There is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asked such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh." For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Now, part of the group that he's talking that is arguing and discussing with the king of Babylon, Daniel and his group are part of that group. Okay, and they hear the word come down, everyone's going to get killed. They go, "Oh no!" And then we're going to go into the second part. But Tim had a comment up there.
Yeah, so Kevin replied Nebuchadnezzar, so it's the same thing.
Ah, good.
Yeah, and then
Good
another
job,
one.
Kevin.
Yeah, another one is Micah said that, did the magicians have real power? It's a question.
Who said that one?
Micah did from
cool.
Arkansas.
Well, if we had a room full of people, I would say, what do you guys think? I think they do have real power, but the source of the power is the key. And I believe when you look at a lot of other numerous places in Scripture, in the Tanakh and the Renewed Covenant, the Brit Hadashah, plus just in my own life, there are real magicians. There is real power there. But the source is from Hasatan, Satan, the adversary. It's not from the Lord. Other times, it is from the Lord. And we want to be with that one. We don't want to be with the other powers. So it is real, but it is underneath the Lord, and it's from a different source, which is why so many of their practices are very possible, because they do work, but they're forbidden. We are not allowed to do those. And so, again, the caution not to go to that power. Hope that helps, Micah. Yeah, and Kevin, good job. Good job on spotting Nebuchadnezzar. Now, in chapter 2, a little farther down, then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning the secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his." So you can see the parallel that Joseph goes to Yahweh in his thoughts and mind after he hears the dreams, and before he even hears the dreams, he tells Pharaoh, "I don't come up with these things. The God that I worship basically does." And Daniel does the same thing, and it's very parallel. So yeah, good job on everybody who got that one correct. Oh, there's a little bit more on that. There's a couple more verses I have on the next page of my notes, sorry. "And he changed the times and the seasons, and he removes kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise," he's talking about Yahweh, "and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth within him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee, for thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter." So that's the rest of that one as well, too. I mean, Daniel gives total praise to the Lord, which is pretty amazing again, because, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I have a dream, I used to think, oh, that was really vivid dream. I'll remember it. And that's famous last words. I'll go back to sleep, get up and go, what was that dream? Did I have a dream? How do I remember, So for a long time, I've kept a notepad and a writing implement next to the bed. And then sometimes I just have it real close to where I have a desk. And I'll get up, and even though it's very strong, I'll go write it. If I feel it's important, I'll write it down and then come back to it, because I'll forget. Nebuchadnezzar forgot the dream, which is why he could not recall the dream. That's why he wanted his Chaldeans to tell him what the dream was. Okay. And then we have a scholar question. Yay! These are always fun. I know Jill, my wife, really liked this question a lot. And I know she and Pat tend to be the ones that answer these the most. But I'll encourage all of you, again, to take a look at this one. In chapter 41, verse 12, we see the word Ibri in Hebrew, okay? and it is the word in English Hebrew. Okay, what can you tell us about this word? Where does it come from, and why is it here? And is this the first time we read of it in Scripture? And what's its significance in Scripture? With all these little questions, what I was hoping is to stir up a discussion and for you to research this word, because it is really interesting where it comes from. Do we have any comments online?
We have a few of comments.
Okay.
Jill said for the Hebrew question, the first time it is mentioned is in Genesis 10:25. It means descendant of Eber, or Ever, depends on how you say it. One of Shem's sons. Abram is called a Hebrew. And then Hahava, which is our plant out in Arkansas. So that's, let's see, they said Hebrew is one from beyond. Joseph was not from Egypt, but he came from the other side of the river. Tracks, like Abraham, the first Hebrew.
Very good. Those are excellent questions and exactly right on. Anybody else?
No, currently those are just the two ones I see.
No, that's fine. That's perfect. Yeah, they answered it really, really well. And it is interesting because Abraham is identified as a Hebrew in Genesis 14:12 and 13. And they took Lot, Avram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom and his goods, and departed. Those are the kings that were raiding those cities. And there came one that had escaped and had told Avram the Hebrew. Okay? So yeah, Avram was considered a Hebrew. And yes, they are descended from Eber, which is interesting as well, too. One of the definitions of it is one from beyond, which would explain Avram, because he was beyond, way over in Ur, and then came down into the land of Canaan. And it's interesting, too, because the root letters of Hebrew, again, if you want to look at the root of a Hebrew word, again, there's no vowels naturally there. They're added later on to help us pronounce it. But if you look at it, you usually look at three letters, and that's the root of the word. And the root of this Hebrew word means to cross over or pass through, which is interesting because Abraham did have to pass, he had to cross over the Euphrates, no, I think it's the Tigris. I'm trying to remember which is north and south, Euphrates or Tigris. He was in between those, so he had to cross one of those to get in. Then the children of Israel had to cross the Jordan River a couple of times, really, going back and forth depending on when you are in their history type of a thing. So there are certain instances where they cross over, and then also they came from beyond. They are outsiders to that land.
It's also interesting that in our walk, in our faith walk, that we're sojourners. This isn't our final home. Our final home is to be with the Lord, and that's what we're shooting for. We're supposed to see ourselves as strangers and sojourners.
That is a very good point, because I was born and raised in the United States of America, and my white ancestors started coming here. Somebody else did the research. I tapped into it, and it was 1630, just 6 years after Plymouth Rock. And that's when they started coming. Most of my white ancestors were here before 1700 from Europe, because I do have some Native American ancestors who were here, of course, a lot longer. So it's really easy for me to feel like patriotic and loyal to this land and this country and, you know, wave the red, white, and blue, which I get, and I'm not going to disregard that. But again, like Tim said, actually, if we look at it from Scripture's standpoint, we are sojourners, we are foreigners. This is just a temporary abode for now. And it's not that I don't respect and be grateful for where I was born and raised and what I enjoy today. I really, really do. I'm the son of a vet and a grandson of a vet, so I do get that, and that's very important. At the same time, I need to look at the broader picture and realize that the Lord is my ultimate Father, and that this is just a temporary place. Yeah, Tim?
Jill says that couldn't it have been that spiritual meaning as well? We're in the image of Elohim and thus from beyond.
Ooh, I've never heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense. That's a really, ooh, yeah. And our God is, our God, our Elohim. He is one from beyond, but then if we're in his image, then that makes us that way also. That's a really good point.
So another point I want to bring up is I want to bring up a scripture verse. And that one is from Hebrews 11:13 through 14. And it says, these all died in faith, and it talks about all the hall of faith, is what some people call this, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, confessed them that they were strangers and pilgrims in the earth. For they who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland, and that truly if they had been called to mind the country in which they had come out of, they would have had an opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is a heavenly, that therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, and he has prepared a city for them. So this is in Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, and it's talking about this. So that's kind of interesting, tying that all together.
Yeah, that really is. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Now, in case some of you are wondering every once in a while, especially when you're reading through them, why do we have these long genealogies? Well, this is where that's coming into play, because we know now that Eber is the father of the Hebrews. And in Genesis chapter 10, this is covered quite a little bit in chapter 11 also. But let's see, where is he? Eber, okay, the son of Salah, great-grandson of Shem, and Shem is the father of Peleg and Joktan. So Shem. So we have the three sons of Noah. So now you know. And remember in Hebrew, the sin and the sheen, it's like a W. There's a dot up on the upper right-hand side above the W. So they're very similar, because in Shem would be a person who is a descendant of Shem, is a Shemite, just like an Amorite is a person who's descendant of Amor. But the sin, sheen can be shifted a little bit, which is why they're called Semites. So you'll see that in this story. And Joseph in Egypt, they'll say, oh yeah, he's the Semite, because they're a different race of people than the Egyptians were, okay? But the Arab people, Semites, a lot of other groups are Semites, and they're from Shem. So again, it's a little bit different with that first letter, but I want to let you know that that's part of the heritage there. And now, go to the next question. Okay, in number 3 there on top. In 41:37-57, Joseph rises to power in Egypt. To what do you attribute Joseph rise to power? Be specific, and a list is okay. And then we read in verses 42-43, Joseph's physical investiture as second in command over all Egypt was his politically expedient to Pharaoh. And then in verse 45, how many pagan connections can you list when Joseph was named and married to his wife? Hint, you will need to do a little research to fully answer this question, but it is fun and well worth the few minutes. And I got challenged to do this once on that verse. And I learned all sorts of fascinating and interesting information, which was really a lot of fun. But we'll start with the top, and the attributes that I had for Joseph, okay, will be read in just a moment. Well, I see a hand in the back.
Well, this one's just a general point. See, I wonder when Joseph came to power, if he went after his old master and his wife who purchased him. I don't know. It's just one of those things that's not mentioned, but I'm like, wonder if he did something, and if not, they would probably constantly be shamed, because they would see him going everywhere and they would have to come buy food from him.
Yeah, Potiphar? Yeah, I've often wondered that also. Very interesting question. Any comments on the internet?
Not quite. I just switched the slide. I'm switching between the slides.
That's no problem. I'll go ahead and go through some of them. The first, I came up with 5, but 2 of them could be combined into one, I think. So 4 or 5. First one was Yahweh was with Joseph, okay? So attributing to Joseph's rise to power, Yahweh was with him, which to me is the most important. That's the foundational. We get that in chapter 39, verse 21. But Yahweh was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And in 23, because Yahweh was with him, and that which he did, Yahweh made it to prosper. So to me, Yahweh was with him, okay? And that, again, is foundational. And you have that, then you can go forward, okay? A couple of these are with Joseph, really. He had his part to play. Joseph interprets the two prisoners' dreams, and he does a good job. Not only does he give credit to the Lord, but he also conveys it accurately, and he conveys the whole thing, even though obviously one of them is extremely bad news. He has to tell the baker, you're going to die. Okay, that baker could have lashed out at him or done anything to him. Who knows? But he interpreted the dreams, and he conveyed that, and he did a really good job there. And then the third one I had was Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and here again, he does a good job. I don't know about you, but I cannot imagine the pressure that was on him coming before who Pharaoh was. The fact that he even he probably looked at him, we don't know, but if he did, he's looking in Egyptian terms on God. And so usually you didn't do that. And so here he is in that presence realizing, I'm either going to get my head cut off or I'm not. It's one of those situations. And so he is going to, I don't know about you, but it's like, you better be focused on the Lord then and be calm. But he does a great job, great job with Pharaoh. Yeah, Tim?
A couple more comments here.
Oh, good.
So from Jill, it says, Joseph's rise to power seems pretty miraculous. Almost had to have been Yahweh, and certainly Scripture points that out. Joseph continually gives Yahweh the credit for his accomplishments, including the dream interpretation.
Very good, Jill. Very good. Now, the second one is kind of tied in with Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams. To me, it's a separate point. It's a separate point, though, to make. This would be number 4. Joseph presents the problem. And I don't know about you, but I've been in situations. I think of one recently where I was working at the Home Depot's warehouse, so I worked here in Salem. And I was in a meeting with a very high-ranking person there with a bunch of us. And I remember at one point he looked at me and he said, David, you haven't said anything. I said, well, I know what the problem is, but I don't know what the solution is. So I'm not speaking yet. He goes, okay, you let me know if you come up with an idea. And Joseph does that. He has the problem, okay? Most people I have found can see the problem. In fact, sometimes quite vociferously, they will tell you what the problem is and not stop. And it's easy to do, okay? The trick is knowing what the solution is. And Joseph had both, which really helped, I believe, Pharaoh. Not only, so he doesn't have somebody who's whining and complaining. It's like, well, duh, Joseph, we all know that one. But what's the solution? And Joseph had that solution. And I would bet everything I own that it was the Lord that gave Joseph both of those there. Yeah, Tim?
Personally, I know it's easy to respect someone, or I have a higher respect for someone if they present the problem, but then they also present a solution, even if the solution's not 100%. It could be like a, solution on stilts, so to speak, but if it's a solution at least, it's like, hey, here's a problem, but, we're going to focus to the solution and ... and but, at least they took the effort to put that solution forward instead of just pointing out the problem. Like you said, everybody could do that.
It's a good point. Very good point. The fifth one I had was that Joseph had a proven track record of doing and succeeding in Potiphar's house and then in the jail. And I think that's important. I mean, you could kind of gloss over it, I guess. But to me, it was important. I noticed that pattern, and I couldn't help but think of the parable of the servants with the talents. Not the one that, buried it, but the other ones, right? He gave one talent, and then he gave the other ones more, right? But the one with the one talent wasn't jealous of all the other ones. He just said, wow, this is great. I've got something I can do for my master. And he went out and diligently did it and doubled it. And that's fantastic. And then when the master judges the situation, he says, you did great, good and faithful servant. I'm going to give you more now. And I've noticed people at jobs will do that, but also the Lord will do that. He may give you a small task. And I know some people who, well, I deserve to be the CEO, and I'm over here cleaning toilets. And they'll get really grumpy. They'll get a bad attitude. They'll do a lousy job. It's easy to do. I'm raising my hand here. Okay, it's easy to do. But what I have learned is to be content with whatever I'm given and do a great and fantastic job with it. Even if I don't get more reward, it doesn't matter. I'm content where I am. And I'll tell you, a lot of times I have been approached afterwards, and they said, we want you to do more now. And I go, okay, great. And if they don't, they don't. I'm fine, because I'm satisfied. I'm very content there. But Joseph really did go up a ladder. I mean, Potiphar's house, that's not a small thing, because he was a very high-level rich man. But the jail was even bigger. And now he's over the whole country. So you can see that progression of him going up in stature. And on the second one here, was this politically expedient to Pharaoh? I had the question phrased differently, which is a little more confusing, but I really want to do a shout out to Jill, my wife, because she said, oh, write it this way. And it is, it's much more clear. And this is one of those questions I was hoping there'd be a whole bunch of discussion. But since it's only Tim and myself, I believe it was very important for several reasons. Okay, it showed the people, because Pharaoh's going around with Joseph and they're driving around, and the people know who Pharaoh is. Most of them, if any of them, even knew who Joseph was. And so now he's being shown, if you're in a chariot with somebody who's more important, let me tell you, you just got elevated up almost to their status. So Pharaoh's showing those people outside of the court where they were meeting, and Joseph interpreted the dreams because they saw it, but all the other people. So he had Pharaoh's authority, he had Pharaoh's blessing, and he's telling him basically he's speaking for me. And that put Joseph in that spot. And then later on, of course, some people came up to Pharaoh and he says, no, go see Joseph, that's his job. Okay? But to me, that was very important for Joseph to have that installment, so to speak, with the people. We do that today too. You know, when the President of the United States is sworn in, it's a big ceremony. You know, it's a huge, huge ceremony. When someone is sworn in, even on a jury, there's somewhat of a swearing in there. When we've anointed people to be deacons or elders here, we do the same thing. So it's a marker. It's before that marker, you were one thing, but now you were another afterwards. And it makes it very official. I went through high school graduation, college graduation. Those of you who've been through those, you know, you've already got your diploma, but you want to go through that ceremony. And so that was important. And this is a huge country. I mean, Egypt, going in and out of somewhat its history, was either the largest empire on the planet or close to it. So this is a huge, huge deal that needs to be done officially so everybody sees it. There's no miscommunication. The priests down in Thebes are going to go, oh, yeah, well, yeah, whoever this guy is, I don't know who this Joseph guy thinks he is, but I'm not doing what he says. They can't do that. They can't do that when this happens. And verse 45, you know, this had come back to me. There was a lot of paganism in this verse. And you think, but let me trot through some of them, because one, it'll give you a little bit of history of Egypt. It's good to know a little bit. When I'm learning about what I call the bad guys, I try not to get immersed in them, but I need to be aware of what they are. But again, I don't want to get immersed, because I can get sucked in, and then pretty soon I'm away from the Lord and I'm following them. I don't want to do that, okay? But I need to be somewhat aware. And Egypt was polytheistic. They had an entire pantheon of gods, very similar to how we know the Greeks. You know, you had the big 12 in Greece. I think it was 12 gods in Greece. But then you also had Rome as well too. Assyria had a bunch, but they usually had one at the top. Now that I think about it, so did the Greeks, because Zeus was at the top. But the Babylonians, same thing, polytheistic. As many gods as you want to cram in, fine. Okay, whereas this one is monotheism, mono meaning one, of course. Okay, and so we're going to go through these. First one is Joseph's name. Okay, that's the first one, Zaphanath Paneah. Okay, now there's a couple of different translation attempts by people going back to the 1800s, but it's interesting because one of them is treasury of the glorious rest. Now, treasury, storing up the food, and when you eat, all of a sudden you feel really, really good, you know, fat and happy type thing. So that name probably is the closest one, okay? But also, when the Pharaoh spoke, everybody
immediately didn't say what. They just said, yes, sir, and they went and did it. Joseph had the same power. So another interpretation coming from the Egyptian hieroglyphics, actually, is the God speaks and he lives. Okay? And the God, I would believe, would be referring more to Joseph, which if you were an Egyptian, that's what you would think. But again, Joseph's refusing that title. He gives credit not to himself, he gives it to the Lord. It just amazes me how well he kept his faith in this extremely pagan culture. And just in this one verse, we're getting exposures to a lot of that. Okay? And then you have his wife's name. You have Asenath's name, which is Asnath. It's H621. It means belonging to the goddess Neith, Neith. Okay, who is Neith? It's a borrowing of the demonic from ancient Egyptian, likely original to have been NRT. Again, they did some of the same things with the vowels and the consonants. She is the terrifying one. Okay, also, she, Neith, was said to be the first and the prime creator who created the universe and all it contains, and that she governs how it functions. So this is his wife's name. Okay, it's like, oh my goodness. He has no allies here except the Lord. He has no allies. His name, his wife's name, the culture, the city where they're going to be in, it's all not good. And her father is Potipharah, or Potipharus, if you read the Septuagint, and it's H6319. Brown Driver Briggs has it as he whom the Ra gave. Capital R, A, and then lowercase a. You sometimes put an H. Ra is the sun god. Okay? He is the chief god of all this huge pantheon. So, his father-in-law is a high priest, I would say, or a very high-ranking priest of the god Ra, and he had an entire city dedicated to Ra, and that is in verse 45 at the end. It says, the daughter of Potipharus, priest of Heliopolis, or On, O-N. Okay? Heliopolis obviously is Greek, and the On is how it's referred to in the Hebrew. Heliopolis, in fact, yeah, in the King James it says priest of On, okay? Heliopolis On. It's located in a spot where I'm going to bring up a map here. Here we go. Now, this is most of Egypt. You have Upper Egypt in the north, or Lower Egypt here. This is all Lower Egypt. Okay, here's the Nile Delta. There's the Mediterranean there. There's Heliopolis. Okay, Cairo is right there. Cairo has today, it's a huge city. It is completely taken over Heliopolis. The only thing left of Heliopolis and today is a single obelisk, a little museum, and they're still, I think, finishing up some excavations in stuff that's underground. But it is, there's Heliopolis there, and there's Cairo, okay? This is where he was, this whole city was basically dedicated to the worship of Ra and all the support structures and everything like that. So there's, again, Heliopolis there, and there's Cairo there. And this is all Lower Egypt, which is in the north. Remember, Upper Egypt has to do with the direction of the Nile. So the Nile's down here, flowing north. So this is upriver, which is Upper Egypt. This is downriver, which is Lower Egypt there. And this is an artist's rendition based on the ruins they have found of the city of Heliopolis, or On, in ancient Egypt. Here's the Nile River here, okay? And here is the major complex to Ra, and then this would be all the support stuff, okay? This is the close-up of this. This temple area was the second largest in all of Egypt. This place was huge, okay? And Joseph's father-in-law is a very important priest in this city. What do you do? It's just amazing to me how he could have gotten that straight in his mind. It's just amazing to me. Okay. Question number 4. We're going to go back. Oh, there it is. And the rest of the parashah, and in future parashahs, we read of Joseph's brothers traveling from Jacob, where he was up in the land of Canaan, to Egypt, then from Egypt back to Jacob again, back and forth several times. What is significant about them traveling to Egypt? Why is this relevant to us today? How far did they have to travel each time? They went to Egypt, then back to their father. And do you think this was necessary to Yahweh's plan? I mean, he could have given Jacob a dream, and poof, they all got to Egypt to live. And then what I'm going to do is go back to this one here. Now, here we are here, Mediterranean Sea, okay? Here's present-day Jordan. There's the Dead Sea. There's Jerusalem. Remember, go to the top of the Dead Sea and turn left. There's Jerusalem. And then here's the Jordan River here, okay? They were up here. There's Shechem, or Shechem in the Hebrew. This is where they were when Joseph had to go down all this way, got captured, and goes over here, okay? And here's Heliopolis. You can see that there. This is about where he went into, okay? This is a very long journey, and Don was nice enough to text me. So how far is this? Well, Nablus is the current name of Shechem. Okay, ancient Shechem. There is a little tell right next to it, and that's officially where it was, but they're real close to each other. Anyway, you can't go this way because it's politically expedient that you not go that way. So you would have to go down and then over, and that's about 506 miles. Okay, so it's probably 400 or so miles straight across. Okay, I just did this on MapQuest here yesterday. So that gives you an idea. Now, when the second part, when Joseph's brothers go, they were up here before. There's Shechem, okay, but now they're down here at Hebron. Again, that's where the cave of the patriarchs is, where everybody's buried. So when the boys are going back and forth, they're only going about this far, and here's the border, because it is estimated that the foreigners who came in to buy food from Egypt, that's where they would have met them, was at the border. And then go from there. And so they were only going this far, which is a lot shorter. I'm guessing about 300 or so miles. Again, it was hard to tell because of MapQuest. It would take you way down and way over. But that gives you an idea. And they keep going back and forth, and they're walking the whole time. I used to do a lot of backpacking. On a good day, you could do 20 miles and not exhaust yourself. And this is a long journey. So this took them quite a while to go back and forth. This wasn't just, driving a, 5 or 6 hours type of a thing. Okay. So that's how far they were going. Oops, I do apologize. Let's go back up there. And so I think it is significant. One, to get them, they were going to starve to death. So for them to get the salvation Yahweh had, they had to travel a long ways. That's very important because sometimes we have to do the same thing. And that's important to know. They were willing to go to that length to live. We're so used to going to the corner grocery store. Oh my, we're in Northeast Salem here. Oh my goodness, I had to go all the way in South Salem to get a grocery store. Dude, that's like nothing. That's like 2 miles or something. But we just don't have that. So you know how far they traveled. And was this part of Yahweh's plan? It seems like it was. I'd be really curious to hear comments from people because nothing seems to be 100% clear. But it was part of his plan to do this. He did not give a dream like he did before. They had to work this thing out. Okay? So I don't have an answer to that question myself. But it was necessary. We read the first half of the account of Joseph cleverly testing his brothers. And why did Joseph do this? And do you agree or disagree with his actions as well? I'm just going over my notes. Oh, yeah, there was one note on that previous one, on question number 4 there. When they went back and forth between Israel and Egypt, it could be that this was establishing a pattern whereby some of the Lord's people go to Egypt for refuge. This periodically happened. There were some times where they were told not to go to Egypt. Jeremiah was specifically told, don't you go there, you go here. Or Isaac was told, don't go there, you go here. He went to Gerar instead. So sometimes they were told not to go to Egypt, but other times they did. So we have when Jacob comes with the whole family, of course. Then you have Jeroboam, who was going to be sworn as the king of the northern kingdom when the kingdom Israel and Judah split. He went to Egypt, then came back. Then you have Joseph and Miriam, or Mary, Yeshua's parents. He had the dream, go to Egypt, and then come back. So it's interesting. This may have started to establish that pattern there. Yeah, Tim?
Mike Wilmot said it had to be a difficult enough journey to make it important for the generations to follow.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And then there's also Abraham too. He went down to Egypt and he also kind of robbed them of some of their wealth because of Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, I missed him on that first answer. I had that one too. Thank you. But I had him on the second part of it. It was not only, Avram went there too, but it was also fulfillment of prophecy given to Avram in chapter 15, verse 13. And he, that's Yahweh, said unto Avram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So, yeah, thank you that he points out that Abraham did go there, but that was a fulfillment of that prophecy. Okay? So I had a couple of things on that one. Then we're right at the tail end here. And the question is, why did Joseph do this? Tim?
Jill has some of the stuff for
The
some
previous
answers
question?
or responses for number 5.
Oh, cool.
And it's for why did Joseph do this? And she says, I think he was being wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove. He responded as he discovered what their natures were. He saw evidence of significant character development, eventually revealed himself to his brothers. I'd be curious to know how Shimon was treated during his imprisonments.
I suspect he was treated very well. He was in Joseph's house, if I remember correctly. So I think he was treated very well. I mean, they didn't know that when they left. They're all panicking. Oh, he's going to die. He's probably eating better than they were. But that's a good point. Part of the reason I suspect why Joseph was testing them is in chapter 42, verse 9. Because the boys are going through their little story here, and it says, and Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, ye are spies. And then he went on with this part there. But Joseph remembered the dreams. And the second dream had his mother and father bowing down to him. So this is surmising, but it would make sense that either at the moment or in the process of doing all this, Joseph had to figure out a way to get his parents to come. And he probably knew how hard that was going to be. Again, we saw how far that trip is. We're talking probably over 300 miles. And Yaakov is walking. I mean, he's not going to walk more than a couple of miles a day. That could take a long time. Be very strenuous. He could die on the journey too. And I know Joseph wanted to see his father, as we know later on. But he remembered those dreams. The other thing is, I think he wanted to find out how to deal with his brothers. He didn't know how to deal with them. He knew how he did before, but he's in the driver's seat now, and now he goes, okay, where are these guys? And I think several of these things he threw up to see. It's very obviously with Benjamin that Benjamin was a very treasured son of the father, and if he was damaged or killed, it would kill the father. And he noticed that the boys were talking about that some to him. So it's like, okay, let's find out. So sure enough, that's why he put the cup in Benjamin's sack. It's like, oh no, if anybody dies, it can't be Benjamin, and stuff like that. And then he watches to see how they deal with it. And sure enough, Judah steps up to the plate and steps in as a firstborn would, and even though he was not the firstborn, and be willing to substitute his life for Joseph's, or even Shimon's, but for Joseph, or for Benjamin, to Joseph, and was willing to die. And he told his dad the same thing. Look, I will answer for this if Benjamin gets harmed in any way. And that's what a firstborn does, is part of their role.
Yeah, looking at the life of Judah gives me hope for my life. I'm not going to lie. Because it's like he really royally messed up so many times. And there's something interesting that I read in a commentary that said that when Reuben said, "Kill my 2 sons," it's interesting that Judah steps up and says, "I'll do it," and the commentator says Judah lost 2 sons. So, the 2 evil sons, I think it's and Onan or something like that. And so he steps up at this time because he knows what it's like to lose children, and then he probably knows what it's like for Yaakov, even though he was a part of the whole ordeal. And if you look at Genesis 44:14, it says, "So Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house." So it's Judah and his brothers. So it's Judah and company. So Yehuda is leading. And I think he's leading like he's supposed to. And it's I don't know, it's very encouraging. It's like there's a redemptive narrative there. And I don't remember if it was Judah who said, "Let's kill our brother," but he was in that company of, hearing his cries when he was in the pit. And yet he did a full turnaround through all the life events and is so much more of a real character here.
Yeah, that reminds me of the discussion we had, I think it was last week, of watching Judah go through what you call the redemption process, which he repents, and he really does change. Part of the repentance is turning away 180 degrees from what you were doing, but also changing your actions and going forward on this new pathway, putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. And Judah, you're right, he did that. This is fantastic from where he was when they threw him in the pit to now he's stepping in going, no, I will take this, and he will protect. It's a fantastic role, which is why I think the scepter was finally given, part of the birthright when Yaakov talks over his 12 sons. Pardon me. The air is really dry, and so my throat's drying out. But the birthright is split up. The rulership goes to Judah, and I think it's because of this process that Judah went through.
There's also another comment from Kevin, and Kevin says, "Is there a picture here about how Yeshua is testing his people now, the nation of Israel?" ?
This is one of those questions where I would turn to everybody who's not here and say, what do you guys think? Kevin, I think you're right. One of the other things I had down here on this question is, so it seems Joseph was going to play these 2 dreams out. Once he realized, he remembered the dreams in verse 9, he's going to play them out. One he already saw as happening because they were bowing down before him, and that's when he started to remember. And then he probably had to figure out a plan for the other dream to be fulfilled. And Joseph knew the famine's length and wanted to protect his father and younger full brother. So I think that was a major, he wanted to see them, but he wanted to protect them because he knew the length of the famine and he knew they probably would not survive. And he wanted to save them. And then also he wanted to see how his brothers are today compared to when they dealt with him before, which I had brought up. But Joseph was really driven hard, I believe, to see his dad and make sure he was safe. And his younger brother, Benjamin, full brother, Benjamin. Are there any other comments? Okay, well that brings...
Yeah, there's one more from Jill. It says, "One other things I would love to be a fly on the wall about, to see how the brothers' reaction, being seated in age order and the meal portion given to Benjamin."
Yeah, he got like 5 times or something. It was a lot what Benjamin got. Yeah, I agree with you, Jill. Being a fly on that wall would have been really interesting.
And then I have one more thing. If it's okay, there's a commentary that had brought up a really good point about this portion.
Which commentary?
It's a commentary by a Messianic Jewish person.
You had mentioned this earlier. It did sound interesting. I didn't know it was a Messianic Jewish person, though. That's good.
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as it's not too long.
Let's see. Alrighty, yeah, it's not too long. It's about a couple sentences. Oh, that's fine. And it says, "What is your worst nightmare? What is your deepest fears? Do not deceive yourself into thinking that your fears will remain a secret. God loves you far too much to leave your secrets hidden away in your heart. Your secrets are known, and your life is predestined to bring you face to face with your worst fear. Facing up to nightmares is a road to salvation. How can you prepare for such a time? Yehuda prepared by repenting the evil he caused his father. You can face up and be honest in committing all fears to God. Ask yourself, are you ready to face up? And this is a question that, asking myself, it's like, oh, I don't know. And so it like made my heart pound real quick. It's like, what am I truly afraid of? And, and thinking about that. And it was there's one more part here. It says, when Yeshua died, he and his father were cut off from one another. In a way, God faced his worst nightmare. He faced it for the love of man.
Yeah, God the Father. That's a very good point. Very good point. And yeah, his brothers, I mean, can you imagine being in the room with him and what they did to him, and then all of a sudden he reveals himself? They're going, oh my goodness, we're dead. He's gonna pay us back, and we deserve it. They knew it. Judah knew it. He mentioned it to Joseph before he knew who he was. It's something we did wrong, And then that fear came up again, because once Yaakov died, they go, okay, now that Dad's gone, oh gosh, now he's really going to kill us this time, And Yosef says, no. But he comforts them with, you meant it for evil or bad, but actually it's of Yahweh. He meant it for good. It was a hard way for him to prepare the place in Egypt. It was hard on Yosef. But it seems to be that they needed a place to stay, and that was the place the Lord chose. And at the same time, fixing the problems with the brothers and being a archetype of Yeshua with us. Same thing. It's just amazing how the Lord can, like multi-layers doing one series of events can be fulfilled. Well, if there's nothing else, we're going to do announcements. Tim's got those up there, and then I'll do the Aaronic blessing.
So the slides are just going to be on there because I'm up here in the control booth, so I'm just going to mention announcements really briefly, and then great conversation. Really appreciate everybody who wrote in questions on the live stream. So see the bulletin, but I have the bulletin in front of me, and if you don't have a bulletin with you, we're not having Oneg. A couple of other things, but the main thing I want to mention is 2023 budget and calendar printouts. When you come here next time in the lobby, or are they on the website? Okay. Breakfast and budget meeting, January 8th. So that's coming up really quickly. 2023, 9 a.m. to noon. Cornerstone will provide pancakes for Oneg-style breakfast. Bring breakfast foods or pancake toppings. So any kind of like side dishes or anything like that is something you want to bring. But the more people we have, the more involved people will feel, and it's a great way to lock arms and step and go in the direction that we believe that Yahweh wants us to go. So would really appreciate if all of you guys come to that. Let's see. Are you having small group today? Yes, we are planning to have small group 4 p.m. at David and Jill's place.
But only if you feel safe traveling. It is melting out there a lot, but if you don't feel safe traveling, please do not come to small group today. We want to make sure you're safe.
Yeah. So church cleaning Sunday, 9 a.m. tomorrow. You could contact Landon if you want to do that and sign up, and he has a sign-up sheet for that. Monday, 6 p.m., Torah Club, and you can see Miranda for that. And I hear a lot of good conversations and growth in that. So Wednesday, 7 p.m. is men's group for all ages 15 and above, and you can see David for that. And same thing, lots of great conversations, lots of building and encouraging each other. Thursday, 12 p.m. Is clothing closet, and you can talk to Pat about that. Thursday, 7 p.m. is group prayer. And you can come here at the church, or the online Zoom access is another way. And I did Zoom this past Thursday because of the weather, and I'll email that out. And most of the emails I send out, you can check the email, check if I mention if I'm doing person or online, and then I normally put a scripture verse on there. But it's always been a big blessing to be able to lead that.
Tim, if someone wants to get on the email list with you so that they can have the Zoom invite and then just click on it and do that, how would they go about that?
They can email, let's see, I don't have my email on here, I don't believe. Yeah, I don't believe I have my email in there. I typically respond and take a lot of the recipients from your Torah portion and put them in because they're similar. And so I just copy and paste a lot of that in there.
Okay, so if they attend here, they can come see you and maybe give you their email. They could also send it to our information email on the website. So if you go to our website, info@cornerstonebaptist.net, you can say, hi, I want to receive Tim's Zoom prayer email, and then I'll forward it to Tim also, so in case you're doing that as well. Because remember, you can be anywhere in the world and participate in the Zoom prayer meeting. You can be anywhere.
And so then if you're anywhere in the world, we're 7 p.m. Thursday Pacific time. So that's LA time, that's Seattle time.
Right. So if you're in other parts of the world, and I used to live over there, everything was on GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Okay, and we're GMT +1 or +2 or -3. I think we're like -8. But if you look us up, yeah, it's the same time frame, time zone that Los Angeles is. So if you go to the websites where you can find that, just type in Los Angeles. It'll give you GMT, I think we're -8 a.m., and you can adjust your schedule accordingly.
And with that, I don't know if we have any more announcements. Yeah, would really appreciate everyone who, again, wrote something in, and it was a great discussion, David.
All right, now we're going to do the Aaronic blessing.
I don't know if I have that up, so it might be a
Don't worry
second.
about that. That's okay. I've got it written here, and I'll just do it this way. Right? Okay. I saw you moving, so I went, well, maybe he'll look. It's okay, though. That's fine. Yivarekeka Yahweh Veishmareka Yaher Yahweh Panav Elecha Vechunecha Isa Yahweh Panav Alecha Neyasem Lecha Shalom. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, tell Aaron and his sons how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, may Yahweh bless you and protect you. May Yahweh make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh look with favor on you and give you shalom. In this way, they will pronounce my name over the Israelites, and I will bless them. Now, normally we would do a blessing over the oneg, but you're going to have your own oneg at home. So, blessings on all of you. Pray that you enjoy the rest of the Shabbat, that the shalom of Yahweh be upon you and your household, and that you will be protected and blessed by him, and that you will be obedient servants to him. He is our master, we are his servant. And so I encourage all of us, especially me too, I do this all the time, is make sure, and I say it out loud usually, to dedicate my life to following the Lord, not his will, not mine. What he wants me to do is what I endeavor to do. Thank you, and we'll talk to you hopefully next week.